Kitco News special coverage of the Xplor convention is brought to you by Radisson Mining.
Hello, welcome to Kitco News. I'm Niels Christensen. Welcome to the Xplor Mining Conference in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Today, we're not talking about gold, we're talking about graphite, which is something completely new to me. So here to talk about graphite is Marc Roy, CEO and President of Focus Graphite. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Niels, thanks for having me.
So I have to preface this. I know, if you want to talk gold and silver, I know I can hold my own. I know absolutely nothing about graphite. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I guess my first question is, Quebec is known for its precious metals sector. It's been mining gold for 100 years. What does mineralization in graphite look like? Is this something we need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to be paying attention to this. It's something that's it's becoming increasingly important in the political environment, global political environment. Currently the world is supplied, 85% of the world's supply of graphite comes out of China. And so we have deposits here in Canada and Quebec in particular. And so we have the ability to do what most countries don't have, is to have that supply chain security and independence. And not rely on China. And there's a lot of good reasons not to rely on China these days. Unfortunately, as is mining, is that it's a long process and it takes time. But there's good quality graphite right here in our own country, and we can do it and we can extract it sustainably. And I think that's probably the most important thing, because we can't ensure that in other countries, certainly not in China. As a matter of fact, we know that it's not being mined sustainably, and so we're extracting graphite to build batteries and EV batteries. 50% of EV batteries is graphite, and so we're extracting it, or we're importing it, and we're actually almost having a neutral effect on the environment because of the way that some of those minerals are extracted or mined in other countries. So it really kind of defeats the purpose of going full electrification when we're hurting the environment to get it done, in this case, where there's a better way, and there's options right here in our own country.
How long will it take before we see a graphite producer in Quebec, do you think?
That's a great question. I'm hoping that it's inside of the next 2 years. There's a company that is ahead of us from that standpoint, and they're starting at a small scale, but the investment is significant still. And so thankfully the price of graphite on the global markets has increased recently and continues to increase because of the projected demand. And I think also because of the uncertainty around China and some of those other producers. So I think we're closer than we used to be. The problem will be meeting demand for North America and having that. So we'll need more than one producer to be able to do that. It'll take a few.
Wow. I guess one of the things I hear is, we're talking about the green energy transition, this global movement for green energy. We're talking about that right now in the midst of an energy crisis. I mean, you look at Europe, they're burning practically everything they possibly can to keep warm. Does this hurt this movement? Are we at a tipping point in the green revolution, or is everything been pushed back because we just, at this point, we need energy so badly that we need it from wherever we can get it?
Well, I think this clearly demonstrates how ill-prepared we were and how important this is for the future, so that we're not in this situation again in the very near future. I mean, they're talking about building battery plants in Canada. I think there's 6 that are being eyed right now. Well, it's not just for lithium, not just for electric vehicles. Energy storage in Canada is going to become more and more important. We're seeing storms everywhere that are wet. We're seeing it, no better example than right now what's happening. And I know there are several companies working on energy storage that is clean energy storage. And so we're going to need, if we had that in place, we would be in a better place.
Well, as good that is a really interesting, because everybody talks about, the Teslas, the exciting part of, electric vehicles, but there is actually this mundane part of just storing the solar energy that we collect.
Correct.
Is that what we should be focusing on? Is the infrastructure and not the Teslas, the toys, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's equally important. I don't think you'll get as much airtime as Tesla would, or the other electric vehicles. Tesla's not the only one, of course, but yeah, I think there's a level of importance there that's more than just driving an electric car, but the security and the stability of energy storage, whether it be solar or windmill, regardless. And then I think that's to me as important, if not more important.
Because that's what I've actually heard is missing. So we do have the infrastructure for renewable energies. We don't. Most of it is wasted because there is no storage. Like you look at like Canada has wind farms, Canada has solar farms, but they don't actually have the storage capacity for all of it. So all of that energy is just kind of wasted.
Right. Exactly.
Do you know how much storage capacity we need? Like how much graphite do we need for this storage capacity?
Well, I can tell you that.
I mean, a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Well, that's exactly my point. Is that if all of the known graphite deposits in Canada were mined today, we still wouldn't have enough.
Wow.
Right. So that's how dependent we are, and so and in certain parts of the world today, they're burning coal today to operate their factories that are producing our batteries and sending them here. Doesn't that seem like kind of we're going the wrong way here? And I just watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles last week, so that's why I get to say that. I get to use one of my favorite lines. But we're definitely going the wrong way when it comes to that. So we need to be able to harvest what we have here sustainably, lower the emissions on the transportation, the manufacturing. And what's happening over there overseas now is that they're doing their own rolling blackouts, and factories are having to shut. So now not only are they doing it unsustainably, but now we're at their mercy and we're not getting everything that we need. And so they control what we get, who gets it. I think we all know what's going on, in Europe today, and who gets to decide who gets natural gas and who doesn't, and who gets oil and who doesn't. Well, politically stable countries, want to be more independent, certainly.
I guess one of the things that I wonder about, because we have seen critical metals, there's a big drive, we overproduce, and then it falls off the map, and it takes another decade, and we're in the same position as we were, sort of 20 years ago. How do we stop that cycle, do you think? And can we stop that cycle in that, is the demand for critical metals, for graphite, sustainable? Are we at a point where it's sustainable now?
Well, it's not sustainable in its current supply chain. That's the issue. Most of the mines that or most of the companies that are working in Canada on graphite exploration have a 25 plus year mine life. And so there's lots of graphite here. The issue is around, the United States making commitments, for the complete transition of vehicles to electric. Those are big numbers. And then you throw in energy storage, you throw in all of the other things. So I think that's the difference between what we've seen in the past, where there's the valleys and the peaks of the need for critical minerals. I think it's straight up from here on in. It's not like, okay, well, you now have your electric vehicle for life. Congratulations, it's yours. Take care of it. You only get one. People will those will change, and I think as technology improves, the ability to store that energy in different and better ways, will also drive the need for the greater need for those minerals.
Okay, so demand right now is driving prices, though, but isn't there a point, though, where, the old saying in commodity markets, the cure for higher prices is higher prices? Like, at some point, does, I guess the rally in graphite, does it end up hurting itself? Like, how do we create a sustainable market without these peaks and valleys, so we can have sustainable production, so we can have, longer mine planning and infrastructure planning?
Right. Well, I think part of that is, it takes easily 10 years from exploration to production in Canada. So if you want to reduce overall costs, there's tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in shortening that journey, if you will. The other is, the cost savings and time savings of transportation in North America of those minerals. I mean, it hasn't affected graphite like it's affected lithium. Like right now, lithium is incredibly hot.
Yeah.
Graphite is seeing, moderate increases. Yet, it's a very significant part of the plan. And so I think there's I don't know that everybody knows that.
How has it been trying to raise money? Because I agree with you. I don't think graphite is seen in the same light as sort of lithium. Even cobalt gets more play than graphite.
Correct. And I think it's a misconception or a lack of understanding how important graphite is. And then I think because it has been abundant out of China or other places in the world, particularly China, it has been abundant, and they control the market, so the prices don't have to get squeezed. I think as long as that continues, then certainly, the price of graphite won't climb. The reality is that there's an alternative. So we go to production in Canada and we're at full capacity here, and we don't meet demand. China can still backstop, or other places that are going to be more sustainably mined. It would be ideal. So that's kind of what keeps the price down. I think is that overabundance that comes from overseas, and it's more cost effective, unfortunately, to be unsustainable. And so.
Okay, so at some point, does government have to intervene in?
Absolutely.
Because what stops China from, as soon as you start production, just coming in and flooding the market, and it's not like we haven't seen this happen many times before. So does at some point does government have to come in and say, okay, because these are critical metals, because we want our own domestic supply, we are going to support domestic production.
Tariffs, do whatever it needs to be. Absolutely, and I think that's one of many things that need to be done. I think the ability to go from exploration to production needs to be accelerated. I think the investment for the long term for the country, or for North America as an example, has to be made by the governments. But yes, we need protection. We need protection from, some countries can and have and will do just that. They'll flood the market, low prices, they crush it, and then they walk away and there's no one left standing but them. That's how they do it. I was talking with someone recently about the difference in political, I said, well, it's hard in North America to have a long-term vision and plan for critical minerals and this kind of transformation when every 4 years it could change. And I asked my friend, I said, when was the last time they had a change in government in China? It's been a while. And I said, so they're not concerned about winning an election in 4 years from now. They're going to dominate a market, and they've got the ability to do it. So yeah, we need it for our own independence, and we need it for our own security, our own supply chain security. And there's movements. There are some minerals. There's lots of talk about traceability. Where do these come from? Where do these minerals come from? And how do we do this? And how do we implement them into production?
Well, and does it come from government, or does it come from the private sector? Like Apple, they want to have credibly sourced minerals in their iPhones.
Right.
Samsung or whatever. But I don't, but if it comes down to if they can get it credibly or if they can just get it.
Well, I think if they can't get it,
Yes.
then that's a problem. Then they're not gonna stop getting it for that reason. But I think if we give them a good solution that checks those boxes, I think that's the right way to do it. It's the right thing to do it, and long term. And not to mention the economic benefit. Currently there are no graphite projects, if I remember correctly, active graphite projects in the United States. So this could become significant, important industry for Canada, and so adds to the economy, creates jobs, and does something in a sustainable fashion. I mean, we're updating our feasibility study for our flagship project, and the entire mine's electrified.
Wow.
Yeah, so, those aren't things you're going to see in other places in the world. That's not going to happen. The cost is extraordinary, but for us, we feel like if we're having a negative impact to get to a positive impact, we're eating away at the benefit. So that's not how we're going to do it.
So I just wanted to go back to an earlier question. How has it been raising funding? Like our investors, I don't know if you avoided that on purpose, but no, our investors, is it an easy conversation to have, or is it like the rest of the mining sector? Is it a struggle to get this capital?
Yeah, look, I think unless you're gold, it's a struggle. And today, actually, for the first time in a little while, even gold might be finding it difficult. So yeah, I'd say it's always difficult, and I think it has to do with the success ratio of exploration to production. And so if we can increase that, then I think investment will come, much easier. I mean, flow through is great. It's limited what you can spend your flow through dollars on, and it's challenging, and it comes with its own. And so, responsible companies need to manage that properly. And flow through is a great tool, and I think is somewhere in the neighborhood of 65% of all investment in mining in Canada, and in that range. And so, it's that hard dollars that are harder to raise, and of course, the markets today are making it's more challenging in today's environment. Last year I was telling people no, thank you, which is a regret today. But most of them were flow through. So you have to limit that, and you have to really monitor that and pay attention to that. So yeah, I think on the hard dollar side, it's a tough haul right now. I think the government needs to do more, or could do more to help that, and help us along. If we get to production, I think everybody wins, and I think we can achieve our sustainability goals.
Well, and that's one of the things I heard is that, critical metals are extremely important, but really, to get, it's kind of the chicken and the egg, which comes first. And one of the things I heard is that, if we had a success story to point to, if we actually had a mine in production, sustainable production, that would go a long way in actually changing investor sentiment in the sector, especially for critical.
Well, I'll go upstream even more than that. Here we are, I think Canada is now slotted for 6 battery manufacturing facilities.
One of those is supposed to be in Quebec too. Tesla wants to build
Ontario, I believe British Columbia, and so that's a start. Now we have a client right here, and so if we're going to go through that trouble to do those, to create those, and to build those sustainably, then let's not ignore the minerals side of it that's needed to do it as well. But I think that opens up the door and opens up the conversation. From an economic standpoint, I think it's amazing for us, for North Americans, for Canadians in particular, to have that kind of independence. I think is absolutely brilliant and essential.
Yeah, well, and I've been really interested in how fast the sector has grown. In that, 3 years ago we weren't talking about graphite in Quebec.
No.
Even pre-COVID, we weren't really talking about graphite. Maybe a little bit of lithium. We weren't talking about graphite.
Now, I joined the company 2.5 years ago, and the talk was from from the team, and it's how we were going to sell graphite to China. I'm like, they don't need our graphite. We need our graphite, but Europe is certainly an important part of that as well. And so, but I think that we as a company we're most interested in what's happening now and the change in 2.5 years, how much has changed. The introduction of those battery plants, the Canadian government and the U.S. government with aggressive plans on the transition to electric vehicles. I mean, those are things that didn't really exist then.
Well, and deglobalization, like this whole idea of supply chain and where we get our supply. It's going to be fascinating to see how this sector evolves, and I thank you very much for your insights. I come away learning a lot more than I did 20 minutes ago.
Niels, great to meet you, and I'll be calling you about all the other minerals.
Well, if you need to look for gold, I can point you in some directions.
Yeah, it sounds like you know a couple of others as well. I'll definitely ring you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, take care. Thanks.
Thank you very much for watching Kitco News. Stay tuned for more coverage from the Xplor Mining Conference in Montreal, Quebec.
Kitco News special coverage of the Xplor Convention is brought to you by Radisson Mining.